No matter how you choose to use Auto-Tune in your workflow, the old adage, garbage in, garbage out, still rings true. While there might be a popular misconception that tools like Auto-Tune can literally turn the worst vocalist into a solid gold star, it just isn't true. Ideally, pitch and time correction are powerful tools that are to be used to take an otherwise solid performance, full of emotion, passion, and tonality, and correct the less desirable parts. But just because something is in tune or in time doesn't make it great. Remember, pitch correction doesn't do much to alter the tonality or emotional impact of a performance, which is arguably 90% of what makes something special in the first place. In other words, yes, you can make a terrible singer sing in tune or in time, but that in and of itself doesn't necessarily make for a compelling performance or song. I personally like to take a more holistic approach to pitch correction, one that leaves no option off the table. If something just isn't working, no matter what tool or technique I'm using to try to correct it, I will go back to the drawing board and re-record a part of the performance if necessary. Some vocal articulations just can't be brought into tune naturally, so it's your job to not only learn how to use these tools effectively, it's also your job to learn when they're going to fall short. In the early stages of learning to work with pitch correction, you might find yourself getting stuck in editing, having to go back and re-record a part to achieve the results you desire. But as you learn the tools, you will be better able to pick out what types of things will hold up under tuning and what won't. So with that in mind, here are a few general tips I like to follow for achieving more natural results with Auto-Tune. Now, if you're working with auto mode, instead of just using one retune setting, try bouncing out 3 or 4 different retune speeds, say 40, maybe 20, maybe 10, and maybe something really slow, in the 50s or the 60s, and then comping between all of those, always saving a untuned version to pull pieces from during the process. Now, if you're working in graphic mode, remember, less is more. What you don't try to correct is just as important as what you do try to correct. So be sure to use your ears and not just your eyes. Remember that the beginning and ends of phrases can sound more natural when you're not trying to pull them in tune. So again, less is more when you're working with the tuning software. Always be sure to listen to the background tracks as you tune, and don't spend too much time in isolation. Sometimes things that sound sour in isolation can sound great against the track. If there are vocal doubles or backgrounds, tune them in context of each other, so they sound good together. I usually start by tuning the lead to the music, and then tuning the background vocals or doubles with the tuned lead vocal in the mix. Remember that the beginning and ends of notes, as well as steep transitions, can be the hardest to pull into tune naturally, especially if a singer starts very sharp or flat, but quickly attempts to correct themselves inside the note. Half the time I find that I need to retrack parts like this, so be on the lookout for those types of articulations when recording. And if you're unsure, take a short 10-minute break and try to work with the material in Auto-Tune during the recording session to see where you stand with a given singer. Now, be sure to never ignore the tone and emotive qualities when recording a vocal performance. In fact, I like to prioritize the feeling and emotion of the performance over completely accurate pitch and timing, because I can fix the latter, but a totally in tune but lifeless, uninspired vocal take is just not very compelling. To achieve extremely natural results, try using a very tuned performance as simply a guide for the vocalist to sing to, or use transposition to come up with harmonies that you then can re-record a more natural performance to. Last but not least, always print or bounce out your work from Auto-Tune to a new track when you're finished and ready to move on. While Auto-Tune is very reliable, it can sound slightly different from pass to pass, depending on where you start the transport from. So once I have the results that I like, I want to commit to them before moving on to mixing.